everyone, and welcome to 1923 Main Street, where pavement, powder, and perfect swells combine with travel style every week. I'm your host, Mike Belobradic, and today, Once an Outlaw, a brief history of snowboarding roots and the inspiration for one of my favorite new lines of apparel we have here at 1923 Main Street, the Once an Outlaw snowboarding series. You know, snowboarding today, if you ride, it's enjoyed by so many different kinds of riders that it's easy to forget, or maybe you don't even know, the not so long ago roots of the sport. So for those of us who were riding in the early days, this episode is for you, and the progress that snowboarding has made in so many ways is actually pretty impressive. If we go back to the very beginning, to the true pioneers of the sport, snowboarding didn't start on the slopes. It started with surfers and skateboarders who wanted to bring that board experience to the winter sports for a whole new rush on the mountain. You may recognize the names of some of those early trailblazers who led the way. Poppin, Milovich, Burton, Sims, Barfoot, and many, many more were there at the very beginning and carved the first tracks that shaped the sport we know today. When the waves went flat, the mountains were calling, riders were looking for a way to surf. Take a board to the mountain, and where there's a will, there's a way. They strapped boards to their feet, improvised bindings, and discovered the rush of carving lines on snow. It was fun, it was freedom, and it was unlike anything the ski world had ever seen. For me, it wasn't too long after the very beginning in the late 80s that I first jumped onto this sport. I still remember those days when my trusty Sorel winter boots were snowboard boots. It was makeshift in those days. It was fun, but one thing was clear. This new board sport was here to stay. Outlaws on the slopes is what we became. And this is the inspiration for the Once an Outlaw series. It is one of my favorites. If you ride at all, you may want to check this out because it's based on the retro history of our sport, because not everyone welcomed this new way to ride. It didn't take long for us to find out that snowboarding, as it eventually became known, wasn't going to be viewed as legitimate. And it certainly was not welcomed on just about any mountain anywhere. You know, in the late 80s and early 90s, we snowboarders were treated like outlaws. We were banned at many resorts outright. Some allowed us on a few runs. Skiers sneered at us, calling us rebels who ruined their perfect corduroy. And sure, maybe we did. But, you know, evolution means adaptation. Snowboarding was raw, creative, and unapologetic. We were not trying to fit in. We were carving our own culture. And as often happens with things that are born from a place that is not comfortable for others, this style changed everything. What started as rebellion and outlaw quickly became influence. Snowboard style caught on. Baggy gear, bold graphics, and a freer approach to riding generally. Resorts built snowboard parks, complete with half pipes and rails, a nod to the skate and surf roots, of course. And, you know, locally where we live, one of our favorite local resorts, this I remember to this day, so fun. They would bury a Volkswagen Beetle in the snow. So it was halfway down the run pretty much. It was really an early board park, basically, so that we could jib and bonk off the roof and the trunk of this car. It was epic and we loved it. And, you know, in those days, skiers really did not know what to make of us. As a side note, it was around this time also that I launched 360 Spins magazine, which was a snow, skate, and sonics magazine, because riders were a community. There was no organization. There were no official competitions. There were no associations. It certainly was not in the Olympics. And, you know, at that point in time, nobody ever thought it would be in the Olympics. If you want to check that out, I'll put a link to it in the blog post. It was a real labor of love that grew quite a bit over time. Interesting story. But over time, the very shape of snowboards began to influence ski design. And when this happened, I remember, I don't know, in a way, sort of nodding like, you know, told you so type of thing. I don't know. But Snowboards actually pushed skis toward the twin tips that you see today, the more playful geometry you see today. The same happened with snowboard fashion. Elements of the style began to crop up in ski wear that many skiers only a few years earlier had swore was, the arch enemy of outfits, like a Darth Vader costume. So what was once outlaw culture became the blueprint for modern mountain life. Many skiers won't admit it, but the facts are the facts. Snowboarding tech and style actually breathed new life into the sport of skiing, which had been on a decline. In many ways, snowboarding did save skiing. So here we went from outlaw to icon. And of course, today, snowboarding is everywhere. Resorts embrace it. Parks thrive. The outlaw spirit lives on in every rider who drops in. What began as a banned pastime is now an accepted global culture, and it's celebrated in streetwear, music, lifestyle, everywhere. Snowboarding is no longer just a sport, it's a movement, and it reshaped what we see on the mountains forever. So from once an outlaw to now a legacy. And this story really was the inspiration behind the 1923 Main Street Once an Outlaw series. It's a tribute to the history of snowboarding. If you love to ride, definitely check it out. It's a real tribute also to the pioneers who rode when they weren't welcome, a tribute to the style that changed the slopes, and a tribute to the outlaw spirit that still defines snowboarding to this day. Even if we are a lot more respectful now and, young riders aren't even aware of these roots. Because once you've been an outlaw, you really never stop being one a little bit on the inside. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the backstory for Once an Outlaw. As always, follow along on social media at 1923 Main Street. You can check out the Once an Outlaw series. We have new designs dropping pretty frequently for this one at 1923mainstreet.com. We will see you again next week, and as always, roam freely and ride boldly.